In today's video, I'll be explaining the complete evolution of Vecna from innocent child to dimension-conquering monster, starting with his surprisingly dark origins that you probably haven't heard before. Human Henry. Before the vines, before the curse killings, before any of the horror show nonsense, there was just a kid. Henry Creel was born sometime between 1944 and 1950, depending on which source you trust, and he seemed like your average pale blonde boy living in 1950s Nevada. But average doesn't cut it in the Stranger Things universe. When Henry was around 8 years old, something happened in a Nevada cave that changed everything. His dad, Victor, worked on some shady government project involving stolen tech from the USS Eldridge, that famous ship from the Philadelphia experiment, urban legend. Henry wandered into the wrong cave at the wrong time and got zapped straight into Dimension X for 12 hours. When he came back, his blood was different, his brain was rewired, and he could do things that shouldn't be possible. He could move objects with his mind, read thoughts, see into people's heads like flipping through a photo album. The stage play The First Shadow shows us this version of Henry as a struggling teenager in 1959, trying to fit in at Hawkins High School while these powers are tearing him apart from the inside. He's got a romance subplot with a girl named Patty Newby. He's participating in school plays. He's actually trying to be normal despite the cosmic horror brewing in his skull. But the more he uses his abilities, the more he realizes something else came back with him from that cave. Something dark and ancient that keeps whispering in his mind about how humanity is a disease that needs to be wiped clean. The thing that separates Henry from every other superpowered character in this universe is that he has a philosophy. He started seeing people as pests, viewing society's rules and structures as unnatural lies that trap everyone in misery. He became obsessed with spiders because they're solitary predators who don't pretend to be anything other than what they are. By the time he's 14, he's already plotting his family's destruction, convinced that freeing them from their fake suburban existence is actually a mercy. The Mind Flayer, that shadowy presence from Dimension X, might have been influencing these thoughts. Or Henry might have just been that disturbed on his own. The show keeps this deliberately murky. But here's where it gets strange. If Henry could already snap bones and read minds at age 8, why wait until he's 14 to kill his family? Hold on to the thought, because the answer isn't what you think. Family massacre. In March 1959, the Creel family moved into a creaky old house in Hawkins. Within weeks, Virginia and Alice Creel are dead in the most brutal way imaginable. Their bones snapped like dry twigs, their eyes destroyed, their bodies contorted into impossible angles, while Victor Creel watched helplessly, unable to move or stop what was happening. Henry orchestrated the whole thing, using his powers, making it look like the house was haunted, or cursed, or possessed by demons. He wanted Victor to take the blame, wanted him to suffer in an asylum for the rest of his life, as punishment for enforcing those societal rules Henry despised so much. The plan worked perfectly. Victor got arrested, got institutionalized, and spent the next 3 decades rotting in a mental hospital, while everyone assumed he was a lunatic who murdered his family in a psychotic break. Nobody suspected the quiet son who supposedly died in a coma days after the attack, except Dr. Martin Brenner suspected everything. Brenner was already running his twisted experiments at Hawkins' lab, looking for psychic children he could weaponize for the government. When he heard about a kid who could snap bones and invade minds, he showed up at the hospital and took Henry away. Instead of dying in that coma, Henry became the lab's first official test subject, designated as number 1. The massacre marked his transition from troubled kid to government experiment, from Henry Creel to 001, and Brenner, playing the twisted father figure, implanted a chip called Soteria right into Henry's neck to suppress his powers and keep him docile for the next 20 years. The massacre proved Henry could kill, but what Brenner discovered next would prove something far worse, that Henry's powers could be replicated, bottled, and injected into other children. And one of those children would eventually be the only person capable of stopping him. But we'll get to that. Lab subject. From 1959 to 1979, Henry existed in this weird limbo state as Hawkins' lab's original psychic guinea pig. Inspired by Henry's abilities, Brenner initiated a program based on real-world MK Ultra experiments, administering psychedelic drugs to pregnant women to induce psychic powers in their children. That's how we got 11, 8, and all the other numbered kids. During this period, Henry went by the alias Peter Ballard and worked as a lab orderly, pretending to be a normal employee while secretly hating every second of his captivity. The Soteria chip kept his powers locked down, but it couldn't suppress his personality or his resentment. He watched Brenner torture children for 2 decades, watched him push 11 harder than anyone else because she showed the most potential, and he started planning his revenge down to the smallest detail. Season 4 shows us this version of Henry as a soft-spoken young man with kind eyes who befriends 11 and seems genuinely sympathetic to her suffering. suffering. He tells her stories about Brenner's cruelty, encourages her to fight back, makes himself seem like the one good person in that nightmare facility, but it's all manipulation. Henry spent 20 years studying every security protocol, every weakness in the lab's defenses, every psychological button he could push to get Eleven to do exactly what he needed. He groomed her into becoming his weapon. The whole orderly persona was just another mask, another lie he told to achieve his real goal, which was escaping the lab and finishing what he started with his family on a much larger scale. And in 1979, he finally got his chance when he convinced Eleven to remove the Soteria chip during a moment of desperation. 20 years of captivity should have broken him. Instead, it gave him time to plan something no one saw coming. And when that Soteria chip finally came out, what happened next was a test. The question is, a test for what? The revenge. The second that chip came out, Henry's powers exploded back to full strength, and he immediately went on a killing spree that makes his family murders look tame. He slaughtered every single person in Hawkins' lab, kids and adults alike, using his telekinesis to break their bones and crush their skulls while they screamed. Blood everywhere, bodies twisted into horrifying shapes. The whole facility turned into a slaughterhouse in minutes. This is the scene we see in Season 4, Episode 7, The Massacre at Hawkins' Lab, and it's one of the most disturbing sequences in the entire show. Henry is making a statement about human weakness and the futility of resistance. He tells Eleven that they're not monsters, they're gods, and gods don't answer to the rules of pests. He wants her to join him in wiping out humanity and creating a new world order where psychics rule and normal people are extinct. It's full supervillain monologue mode, complete with the glowing eyes and the contemptuous sneer. But Eleven refuses and fights back with everything she's got. The two of them clash in this massive psychic battle that tears the lab apart, throwing each other through walls, crushing metal, screaming with effort, and just when Henry thinks he's won, just when he's about to kill her, Eleven digs deep and finds a reserve of power she didn't know she had. She grabs him psychically and rips open a portal to another dimension, the Upside Down, and throws him through it like taking out the trash. Henry vanishes into the void. The portal seals shut and Eleven collapses from the effort, her head shaved and her powers temporarily burned out. Everyone assumes Henry is dead, vaporized by whatever hell dimension he landed in. They have no idea what's about to crawl back out. Transformation complete. The Upside Down remade him into something worse. When he landed in that toxic alternate reality, he was still human, still recognizable, but the environment in the Upside Down is hostile to normal biology. The air is filled with spores and particles. The lightning storms carry weird energies, and the whole dimension operates on rules that don't make sense in our world. Over the following years, Henry's body started changing. His skin turned pale and veiny. His muscles atrophied into a skeletal frame, and vines from the Upside Down environment grew into his flesh like parasitic roots. His face lost its nose. His eyes sank into his skull, and his fingers elongated into talons. He became this grotesque fusion of human and environment, a walking corpse held together by psychic will and vine matter. The practical effects team used foam, latex prosthetics, designed by Barry Gower to create this look, and it takes actor Jamie Campbell Bower over 7 hours of makeup application to transform into the monster. But the physical changes were nothing compared to what Henry did with his mind. He found the Mind Flayer, that vast shadowy presence that might have influenced him as a child, and he reshaped it into a spider-like entity he could control through a hive mind connection. Or maybe the Mind Flayer reshaped him, and he just thinks he's in control. The show deliberately leaves this ambiguous, because the truth might be too disturbing. Either way, Henry became the ruler, or maybe the puppet of the Upside Down's ecosystem, commanding demogorgons and vines, and every other creature in that dimension like pieces on a chessboard. He adopted the name Vecna, borrowed from the Dungeons & Dragons Lich character that Hawkins' kids use in their campaigns, because that's exactly what he became. An undead wizard with god-level powers, and a hatred for all living things. So Vecna had his monster body and his hive mind army. He could have invaded immediately, but he didn't. He waited 7 more years, watching, learning, studying Hawkins from the shadows. Why the patience? Because he needed something specific, something only Eleven could give him, and she had no idea she was helping him get it. Invisible threat. For the next several years, Vecna stayed hidden in the Upside Down, building his strength and planning his invasion. During seasons 1 through 3 of Stranger Things, he's not physically present, but his influence is everywhere. The Demogorgon that terrorizes Hawkins in season 1 is his scout, testing the barriers between dimensions and hunting for Eleven. The Mind Flayer that possesses Will Byers in season 2 is Vecna's direct puppet, using Will as a spy to gather information about Hawkins and identify weaknesses in our reality. The Flayed in season 3, all those people who who get taken over and turned into meat puppets for a giant flesh monster. That's Vecna preparing the groundwork for something much bigger. The whole time, the characters think they're fighting disconnected threats, random monsters and possessions that don't have a central intelligence behind them. But looking back with Season 4 knowledge, it's clear that every single upside-down incursion was Vecna testing defenses and learning how to break through permanently. He was studying the party, learning their tactics, identifying who among them had the most trauma he could exploit later. Will's connection to the hive mind gave Vecna direct access to everything Will experienced. Every conversation, every plan, every emotional vulnerability. The kid was basically a walking surveillance device, and nobody realized it until way too late. This invisible threat phase also let Vecna recover from his transformation and adapt to his new body. He needed time to master controlling multiple entities at once, to learn how to manipulate the upside-down vines like extensions of his nervous system, to figure out the limitations of his curse powers. By the time 1986 rolls around and Season 4 begins, he's ready to make his move for real. And this time, he's not hiding behind proxies or possessions. This time, he's coming for blood directly, and he's going to make sure everyone knows exactly who's responsible for their suffering. But watching from the upside down was just reconnaissance. What comes next is where Vecna started weaponizing trauma itself, and 4 victims would prove he'd perfected the art of turning people's pain into dimensional doorways. The question is, why exactly 4? Hold that thought. Curse mechanics. Vecna's killing method in Season 4 is pure psychological warfare disguised as supernatural horror. He doesn't just murder people, he traps them inside their own worst memories and forces them to relive their traumas until their minds break. The curse starts with headaches and nosebleeds, classic psychic strain symptoms that victims often dismiss as stress or lack of sleep. Then come the visions, highly personalized hallucinations that pull from the victim's deepest guilt and shame. Chrissy Cunningham sees her mother's verbal abuse magnified into body horror. Fred Benson relives the car accident that killed someone and his failure to get help. Patrick McKinney confronts his father's violence. And Max Mayfield, the main target who almost doesn't make it, drowns in guilt over her stepbrother Billy's death and her secret relief that he's gone. Vecna uses these traumas like weapons, breaking down their mental defenses until he can physically manifest in their mindscape as this towering monster surrounded by vines and decay. He taunts them, tells them they deserve to suffer, and when their time runs out, he snaps their bones and gouges out their eyes while they levitate in the real world, turning their bodies into grotesque displays that leave witnesses traumatized for life. Each killing also rips open a small gate to the upside down at the location where the victim dies. Vecna needs 4 gates total to merge the dimensions completely, to turn Hawkins into a hybrid hellscape where he can physically enter our world and spread his influence across the entire planet. It's an apocalypse plan disguised as a serial killing spree, and the clock motif that appears in every victim's vision represents Vecna's contempt for time and order, his desire to break humanity's structured existence and return everything to primordial chaos. The only known defense against the curse is music, specifically songs with strong emotional connections that anchor the victim to happy memories. Max survives her first encounter with Vecna because Lucas plays Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush, and the song pulls her consciousness back to moments of genuine joy with her friends, giving her enough strength to break free from the mindscape and wake up in the real world. Music as a defense sounds too simple, doesn't it? Like the show's writers needed a quick fix. But there's a deeper reason why songs work as anchors, and it ties directly to what happened in that Nevada cave decades earlier. We'll circle back to that. Hellfire Connection. The Hawkins kids accidentally name him when they're trying to figure out what's killing their classmates. Eddie Munson, the Hellfire Club dungeon master, makes the connection between the real murders and the Dungeons & Dragons villain Vecna, a lich who ascended to godhood and rules over secrets and hidden knowledge. The original D&D Vecna lost his hand, an eye in a betrayal, and his body parts became legendary artifacts that grant immense power to anyone who possesses them. The Stranger Things version keeps the god complex and the body horror, but swaps magical artifacts for psychic abilities and dimensional control. It's a perfect name for Henry because it captures everything he became. A undead creature who hoards knowledge about humanity's weaknesses, who sees himself as transcendent and superior, who lost his humanity and gained something far more terrible in return. The Hellfire Club uses Vecna as their campaign's final boss in the season premiere. Not knowing they're about to face the real thing in a few days. There's this dark irony in watching them roll dice and strategize about defeating a fictional monster, while the actual monster is already stalking their town and planning their deaths. The game within a game structure also lets the show play with meta-narrative elements. When Dustin and the others finally figure out who Vecna really is, when they learn about Henry Creel and the lab massacre and the Upside Down transformation, it reframes the entire series as Vecna's revenge campaign against Eleven and everyone connected to her. He's the original psychic, the source of all their powers and all their problems. And just like in D&D, defeating him requires strength and understanding his weaknesses and exploits. The kids have to think like players in a campaign, gathering information, forming strategies, exploiting vulnerabilities. Music as a defense was pure trial and error experimentation, the same way you'd test different approaches in a game until something works. Season 4. When Vecna finally reveals himself in full monster form, it's through Nancy Wheeler's vision. He drags her into the Creel house mindscape and gives her the full villain monologue treatment, explaining his entire backstory and his motivations, like he's been waiting decades to tell someone. He shows her his childhood, his family massacre, his lab imprisonment, his transformation. He tells her about his plan to open 4 gates and merge dimensions, turning Hawkins into the epicenter of a new world order, where the Upside Down bleeds into reality permanently. Nancy survives the vision, but barely, and when she wakes up, the gang finally has all the pieces of the puzzle. They know who Vecna is, what he wants, and how he's achieving it. The rest of Season 4 becomes a desperate race to stop him before he completes his ritual. The party splits into multiple groups, some in Hawkins trying to protect Max as his next victim, others traveling to the Upside Down to attack him directly in his lair. It's classic Stranger Things, divide and conquer storytelling, everyone playing their part in a coordinated assault. The climax happens in the Creel house, both the real version and the Upside Down version simultaneously. Max volunteers as bait, letting Vecna start the curse process so she can hold his attention, while Steve, Nancy, and Robin sneak into the Upside Down version of the house and attack his physical body with Molotov cocktails and shotguns. They set him on fire, they shoot him repeatedly, and for a moment it seems like they actually killed him. His body falls out a window and crashes to the ground in a burning heap. But when they check later, there's no corpse, just a trail of blood leading away. Vecna survived and escaped, wounded, but very much alive. Max wasn't so lucky. At the last second, Vecna completes the curse, breaking her limbs and killing her before 11, attacking him psychically from across the country, manages to restart Max's heart. She survives, but falls into a coma, her mind trapped somewhere between life and death. And even worse, the 4 gates open anyway, merging to create a massive rift that tears through downtown Hawkins like a scar, releasing toxic spores and vine matter into the town. Vecna technically lost the battle, but he won the war. The apocalypse has begun, just slower than he originally planned. So Vecna survived, the gates opened, and Hawkins started dying. Victory, right? Except his plan required 4 gates, and he got them. So why isn't the apocalypse complete? What's he actually waiting for? The answer involves 12 children, and a ritual nobody saw coming. Stage origins. The first Shadow stage play strips away all the monster elements and focuses purely on Henry as a traumatized teenager trying to prevent his powers from hurting people. It's set entirely in 1959 and shows us the weeks leading up to the Creel family massacre, giving Henry a level of depth and sympathy the show deliberately withheld. We see him genuinely caring about Patty Newby, participating in a school production of The Tempest, and struggling against the Mind Flayer's influence as it slowly corrupts his thoughts. The play's Henry is torn between his innate empathy and the dark philosophy being whispered into his mind by an entity he doesn't fully understand. He has panic attacks when his powers manifest involuntarily. He cries when he realizes he's hurting people. He tries to warn his family that something is wrong with him, that they need to run before it's too late. It's a completely different portrayal than the cold, manipulative orderly we see in Season 4, and that's intentional. The play wants us to mourn what Henry could have been if he'd gotten help instead of exploitation. The tragedy of the first Shadow is watching a scared kid who needs therapy and support get slowly twisted into a supervillain because nobody in his life knows how to help him. His dad is too focused on work, his mom is too religious and interprets his powers as demonic, and the town of Hawkins in 1959 has zero framework for understanding psychic phenomena. By the time Dr. Brenner shows up offering answers, Henry is so desperate for someone who understands that he walks right into a trap that will define the rest of his existence. The play ends right before the massacre, leaving the violence off stage, but making it clear that Henry crossed a line he he can never uncross. That the empathetic boy is about to die, and something much worse is about to be born in his place. The play wants you to sympathize with Henry, to see him as a victim who could have been saved. And maybe that's true, but it also raises an uncomfortable possibility. What if showing us his humanity isn't about redemption? What if it's about making his final choice in Season 5 hurt even more Mr. What's-It? Season 5 introduces Vecna's most disturbing trick yet, the ability to appear human again, using illusions or shape-shifting. He creates a persona called Mr. What's-It, a dapper, friendly-looking man who approaches children and lures them away with promises of safety and understanding. The alias comes from A Wrinkle in Time, where Mrs. What's-It is a mysterious celestial guide, but Vecna's version is pure predator, wearing a trustworthy mask. Holly Wheeler, Mike, and Nancy's little sister, becomes his primary target along with 11 other children. He kidnaps them one by one, taking them to the upside-down version of the Creel house, where he keeps them docile in some kind of psychic stasis. The show doesn't fully reveal his plan in Volume 1, but context clues suggest he needs exactly 12 children for a ritual that will amplify his powers and complete the dimensional merge he started at the end of Season 4. The number 12 has symbolic weight, possibly tied to the 12 test subjects who preceded 11 at the lab, or to some occult numerology that fits with the D&D Vecna's obsession with arcane knowledge. What makes Mr. What's-It so effective as a horror concept is how it subverts Vecna's previous methodology. He's not relying on trauma curses this time. He's using direct manipulation and abduction, playing on children's trust and their desire for safety in a town that's falling apart from upside-down corruption. The friendly appearance also serves as psychological warfare against the party, forcing them to confront the fact that some part of Henry Creel's humanity still exists, even if it's only being used to make him a more efficient monster. It raises uncomfortable questions about whether he can be reasoned with, or if redemption is even possible for someone who's committed this many atrocities. Armored Evolution. By the end of Season 5, Volume 1, Vecna's physical form has evolved again into something even more nightmarish. The injuries from the Molotov and shotgun assault in Season 4 left him weakened and scarred, but instead of healing normally, his body adapted by growing additional armor made from upside-down vines and organic matter. The new design features a broader stance, more skeletal features, and vine tendrils that move like Medusa's snakes, giving him a mythological quality on top of the horror. The armor enhances his combat abilities. His arms can extend at range using vine appendages, letting him impale or grab targets from across a room. His regeneration has improved, letting him recover from wounds that should be fatal. And his connection to the hive mind has deepened, allowing him to resurrect dead demogorgons and control them with even greater precision. When he attacks the Max Zed military base at the end of Episode 4, he's a one-man army, ripping through soldiers and vehicles while simultaneously maintaining psychic links to his kidnapped children and battling Will Byers, who's channeling his own developing powers to resist. The armored form represents Vecna's complete divorce from humanity. Where Season 4 Henry still had recognizable human features, buried under the decay, Season 5 Vecna is pure monster. His movements are more alien, his voice more distorted, and his tactics more brutal. The show's creators described the redesign as Vecna at his final form, implying this might be as powerful as he gets before the final confrontation. It's also a practical evolution, driven by narrative needs. The party hurt him badly at the end of Season 4, so he needed to power up to remain a credible threat. The armor gives him that edge, while also visually communicating that he's no longer the person he was, that whatever remained of Henry Creel has been fully consumed by the monster. The armor makes him stronger, faster, deadlier. But here's what doesn't make sense. If he's at his final form, why does he still need the 12 children? What could those kids possibly give him that he doesn't already have? The answer is worse than you think. If you enjoyed this video and want to see how Stranger Things deaths were made behind the scenes, click the video on the screen.